Today we're working on my daughter's 2008 Chrysler PT Cruiser 2.4 liter non-turbo car. I'm going to insert some video here that shows the symptoms, at least, of what was wrong, and then we'll talk a little bit about what is actually wrong with this car. Do it again. As you can see from the video, motor's trying to jump out of this car. Motor's trying to jump out of it because the motor mounts are failed. This thing's got basically 3 motor mounts, 1 transmission mount. Of those 3 motor mounts, or all 3 of them, I guess I should say, are on the front of the motor, and all work from the front of the motor system. Here is, see if I can show you, this is the upper motor mount. There's a similar mount on the bottom, and in the center there's a mount. The center mount, what I found is that the bolt in the center mount has sheared. Normally, if you look under the wheel well, you can see an area here, a hole, where there should be a bolt going into the front of the motor, a plate mounted on the front of the motor. That bolt is gone, and from what I can tell, looks like we've basically sheared that bolt off, which means we're going to have to extract that bolt from the plate in the front of the motor. That's going to be a little tricky. We're going to have to take the plate off the front of the motor to do that. So what we're going to do is, right now we have the front of the motor, or the motor rather, supported with a jack. We've replaced the transmission mount, so the back end of the motor is fine. Back end of the transmission is held up well. So we use this jack. They're going to use this jack to hold up the front. Then we're going to strip the upper and lower, and then we're going to have to remove the plate that this bolt hole goes into, and you'll see a little better once we get that out. And then we're going to have to extract that bolt, and I've got a replacement bolt, replacement mounts. Bought a kit basically that has all the mounts with it. For example, here's the upper mount. Here is the lower mount, similar but longer, and then this is the central mount on the motor, and this is the bolt that has sheared. It's a replacement bolt that we're going to put in there. So let's get this job started so we can get this job finished. So to get this front motor mount, or this top motor mount, excuse me, off, that's fairly straightforward. There's an 18mm here that holds the motor mount to the frame. So it looks like that. Then there are two 15mm. I'm going to show you this. The easiest way to remove this is to remove these 2 15mm that bolt, or that hold this motor mount onto that front plate I was talking about, which we'll see in a little bit. So there's one of them. Hoses and the like in the way. So this one power steering hose is all up in the way of this bolt, but we can get it. Okay, so there you go. There's the second 15mm. Now with those out, basically your motor mount comes free. Now you just got to sneak it between the timing belt cover and the AC hose, and now you've got it. Now if you'll notice, let me grab the new one here. On the new one here, it goes like so. The new one does not have this piece that you see here on there, because there is a bolt here that needs to come out. So when this bolt comes out, transfer it to here, and we'll move this mouthpiece over onto the new motor mount. And it's pretty straightforward, this top mount. didn't have a broken central mount. It would be a lot quicker job. But so we'll move this piece over onto here. This thing is keyed. You'll notice there's some grooves right there, and so therefore it should only go on this way. Obviously you could put it on this way, but it would be upside down. So we'll get that on there. We'll use some anti-seize, and we'll get that on there and get it ready to go. Now I will not quite tighten this bolt. I'm going to tighten this bolt completely once it's in, just so that we have a little bit of room for aligning of the bolts when we reassemble it. So that's the top mount, and the top mount is out and basically ready to go back in when we get to that point. Okay, so we have removed the cowling that covers up on this wheel well. Here's the cowling right here. It's a series of 10 millimeter bolts, excuse me. Series of 10 millimeter bolts in the top here, and then a number of clips. Let's see, there's one there, and then there's some clips here in the front, body clips. So that thing needs to come out so that you can readily access the bottom motor mount, which is the horizontal aluminum bracket that you see there. Fairly straightforward. One bolt on this side, and then a bolt. It's a through bolt. Holds together a few things there on the front end, but we can fairly easily get that out, and then take away this bar. And once we do that, then we've got to see about removing that central plate. Give us a little bit of access here from the bottom to get to that plate, and then also access from the top. So let's see if we can get this little monster removed, this lower engine mount, and then we'll take it from there. Alright, this bolt on the motor itself is an 18 millimeter. I can figure out what I did with my 18 millimeter. I'd be alright. So this is an 18, and this bolt back here toward the rear, which you may not be able to see too well, is a 15. So we can begin to remove these bolts in earnest. Let's start with this 15 here. Okay, so that nut has been removed. Let's see if I can reach it. And now for the 18 millimeter on the front. I have loosened these already. Okay, so the 18 is out of the front. Motor's supporting itself, no problem. So that's good. Next thing we're going to have to do is get this bolt out of the front. Nuts loose, which may or may not have been the right thing to do. Let us see. So we've got this bar. There's another nut behind it. So may have been the right bolt to remove. Let's go take a look. See if I can get this other side loose and see what comes of that. Maybe that's the better approach. All right, we're gonna get up under here, and hopefully you can see a little better now where we're working. We've taken a nut and a bolt off here. There's a nut back here, which is probably a 17. Let's see. Well, this must be an 18. Indeed. And so we've got that nut to consider, and then we've got one back here which is larger, to try to figure out which one of these we want to take out. So get a little bit larger wrench. I think we're going to end up taking this nut off, as well as this one, and probably loosen this top support on this top of this rod so that things will be a little bit freer to move around. So let's get that going and see where we end up. Alright, so for reference, we removed this this support bar, tied it up out of our way, or not as much in our way at least, and then taking a 19 millimeter, you see now this thing's dropped down. You can now see where that bolt went, and we're just removing this little wonder, and pretty quickly I think that whole thing is just going to pull right out of there. Also a collar back there that may also drop out, so put our hand up on that if we can. So this bolt is out, and we'll pull the support out. So there it is. So there's your lower engine mount removed, and nothing we need to transfer off of that I can see right off, so that's good. Just a note, and something's also true on the top. These rubber supports inside these mounts, they're totally trashed, which you would expect considering the amount of craziness that was going on in that motor. Now I'm going to see if I can show you the part that we need to be concerned about that has the strip bolt in it. So let me see if I can get you up in there to see it. Alright, so we are looking up under the wheel well, in between the motor and the frame. If you'll note this piece, if you can see my hand, I hope, this piece, that is the central motor mount that we're going to have to remove. That central motor mount screws into this chunk of steel right here. You'll notice there's a bolt, one bolt there holding that chunk of steel on. That chunk of steel is going to have to come off, because if you can see it, there's a bolt and it's sheared off just about flush with that face. There's no way we're going to be able to reasonably extract that without getting it onto the bench. Considered maybe we could extract it through the hole, but one thing I've come to realize is that if we're going to take out this central motor mount, we've got to have enough space for it to move back anyway, and this is going to prevent that. So we're going to just cut to the chase. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this steel plate off the front of the motor. So what all does that mean? Well, there's certainly obviously very obviously a bolt there. There's some recesses in that plate. If you can see up the front there's some recesses. There's some bolts in it, and there's a recess on this side with a bolt in it. Not going to be a lot of fun to get to those bolts, but we're going to do what we can. And then also that plate comes around behind that pulley, so we'll have to look at what that's going to take. So it's going to take some exploring, but we'll make it happen. Let's see what we can do. Well, I guess I'll update you on what I've decided. Just for ease, it's not going to take but a few minutes to do. I'm going to go ahead and pull this serpentine belt, release the tensioner here, pull the serpentine belt, and then we're going to go ahead and loosen the alternator and pull the alternator belt. What that's going to do, hopefully, is give us access to the harmonic balancer. We're going to go ahead and pull this front crank pulley, harmonic balancer, whatever you want to call it. We're going to go ahead and pull it off, which is a bit excessive maybe, but I think ultimately what we're going to want to do is we're going to get this plate loose. We're going to want to drop it down, and in order to drop it down, we need some clearance space here in the front of the motor. This is going to make it very difficult to get that plate out of there. And then as well, we're going to pull the 4 bolts that hold this front mount on, and so we might as well go ahead and just again make space for that. So is it a bit much? Maybe, but truthfully this is a fairly quick job to remove these 2 belts and remove the harmonic balancer. I've had this harmonic balancer off before on another job, so kind of know how it goes. But basically we're just gonna hook it with a 3-jaw puller after we pull out the primary bolt, and then get it out of the way. So let's move forward. Alright, so removing the serpentine belt is quite simple. It's a 15mm bolt here, bolt head here on the tensioner pulley. Put 15 mil on there, twist it, loosen the belt, pull the belt off. Note your belt pattern. This one's pretty simple compared to most serpentine belt patterns. Now for the alternator, there is, I'll do my best to get you a view, sorry. There's a 15mm here, and then up in there, you can see it just past the belt, there's a 15mm. Loosen those two, and then on the end of the bracket is a tensioner. It's a 13mm tensioner, and we'll look at it from the top side. Alright, we're going to try this, see if we can do it. Okay, so here is the other 15mm that we loosened, and then on the end of this bracket where my finger is there is a bolt that, given moving it with a 13mm wrench, will begin to loosen, put slack in that alternator belt so we can get it off there. So let's see if we can do that. Alright, so we used an impact and a 19mm socket to remove the center bolt from the harmonic balancer. Now we've reinstalled the center bolt with a good 5 or 6 threads, I think, and that's going to be our pivot point to pull out this harmonic balancer, pulled off the shaft. So I've got a 3.3 leg puller that I've hooked. Now I've hooked it onto the small gear, small belt running area there, and hopefully that's going to be enough grab. So let's try this with our impact, see if we can pull this thing off. So first we got to turn the impact so it's going the right way. Alright, so I got that puller back on there. That was a pretty brilliant move. It's not an easy thing to get these pullers installed. Trying to hold those 3 legs on and tighten the bolt all at once, but we should be going the right way now anyway. Let's see. Alright, so we'll loosen this just a touch. There we go. As you can see, that puller came out, that puller brought that out a ways. So let me pull this 19 a little more. There we go. So the question is it far enough? Doesn't look like it's quite far enough to come free. So we're going to do it one more time with a few less threads. I think we'll be alright. So let's get that puller back on there. Okay, so I made sure that my impacts go in the right direction. There we go. Now it's fully loose on there, so we can drop the puller, finish pulling this bolt, and harmonic balancer is in hand. Yay for us. So we now have a lot more room. Show you a lot more room up under here to be able to access these pieces. So let's get started taking this plate out of here so we can extract that broken belt bolt. Alright, so let's talk about what now is holding this plate in. We've got some good clearance room, we can see pretty well. So I've got a bolt here. We've got 2 bolts through holes, through recesses here. There's one here, there's one on this side. Will be tricky, but I think we can get to those with a socket. Then on this side we've got 2 bolts that come off of the power steering pump, and so those 2 have to come out from the back side, so we'll have to come and take those out from the top. So let's see if we can get started. Okay, so let me remove the 2 bolts that go through the power from the back of the power steering pump into the mounting plate, which, if I could get to it and show you, it's they're down there. I can't really point to them too well. Then, as I told you, there's 2 recesses. Here's one of them where my hand is. Here's the other one on this side. You see there's a bolt poking out. Remove those 2 bolts. The 2 bolts on the power steering pump are 13 millimeter, and they came from the back of the pump. Got those 2. And then these 2 are 15 millimeter, and took them here from the front. A little scraping, rubbing, cussing, but they're out. Well, they're loose. This one I got to come all the way out. This one, however, there's not clearance for it to come all the way out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait and take it out a bit later. So a couple of key things. If you'll notice, the motor here is, hopefully you can tell, the motor's jacked up pretty high. I jacked the motor up as high as I reasonably could so that I could get my hand down here to the power steering system, get to these bolts, and also so I could get better access to those recessed bolts. Now I'm going to drop the motor back down and take off that bottom bolt, which I also believe is 15 millimeter, but I'll let you know. Okay, well, let me get back to this. Regretfully, we lost a bunch of footage on this job. Camera went awry for some reason, but I'm going to lead you through it, what we've done. I think in the last clip I was showing you that we had taken out the bolts from the power steering unit, and that we'd taken loose 2 of the bolts up underneath here, the recessed bolts, and we took off the bottom bolt, which is a very obvious bolt. And then becomes the challenge of getting this plate out, this mounting plate that hopefully you can see me pointing to right there. Well, in order to get that out, we got to do a few things. First, we have to take out this mount. It's got 1 bolt back here and then 2 nuts up here toward the front, and we took those out. I believe those were 18 millimeters. Don't hold me to that. Then the next step is, in order to get clearance for this thing, is to jack the motor all the way up. But what we found is we couldn't jack it far enough up, because right back in here, you can see the exhaust system back in here. The exhaust system bottomed out against the bottom of the car. So we ended up having to drop the 4 nuts that hold the catalytic converter to the exhaust manifold so that we could bring the motor up even farther. So we finally managed to get the motor up far enough in order to get this plate out. One other thing we did to make getting this plate out easier was to remove the 3 bolts that hold this top cover on, and that just gets it out of your way. You can see better what you're doing, gives you a little more clearance. So it came out the top ultimately after removing this bracket, disconnecting the catalytic converter away from the exhaust manifold, those 4 nuts, and then removing this top timing belt cover. Again, that's pretty easy. It's only 3, I think it was 3 bolts that held it on. Then we jacked it up as far as we reasonably could, and finally we got enough clearance to get that plate out. Now, I told you that plate had a broken bolt in it. Let's see what I did with it. I had trouble getting the bolt out, of course. It was all been kind of a challenge here, but what I ended up doing was it was flush to the head, flush to the plate. So I ended up welding, basically tack welding a bolt onto that bit of stub that was stuck in there, and got it out. And you can see it was cross-threaded like a monster. So we had to re-tap that hole, clean it up real good, new bolt, put it in, and now we're good. If you look under the wheel well, now you can see proper bolt installed there through the motor mount. Now the other thing we wanted to do, of course, was we wanted to change out that motor mount, and I tell you, if you change that motor mount, as a matter of fact, every time you change the motor mounts out of this car, you're going to have to pull that plate. That plate has to come off, which means you have to clearance the front of the motor by jacking this thing up ridiculously high to get it out, because that motor mount, you can see maybe where my finger is down there, that motor mount, what you see when you look down there is you see that, but in fact all of that has to come out the front, and there is not room unless you remove that large mounting plate on the front of the motor. So wow, indeed. Just bank on it. If you replace this central motor mount, you've got to pull this plate. In my case, I had to pull the plate because I had a cross-threaded broken off bolt in there, but it's just a lot of effort. This top motor mount and also the bottom motor mount, which again, I put the bottom motor mount on again while I had bad footage. So if you look at the bottom motor mount, it's on. It's not really a big deal to install it. Literally, there's one bolt down there, and there's a through bolt here. Still need to hook up this supporting bar, and we'll do it pretty quickly here. And then, of course, after I got all that back together, I put the harmonic balancer back on, put the belts back on, reattached the power steering pump bolts. So we're pretty much together. And like I said, bottom motor mount, lower engine mount is in, and now we've just got to install the upper. I'll show you that real quickly. It's actually quite trivial. The easiest way I found to do it is just to stuff it in there, take it down. Sorry if you're not seeing real good here, but basically just slide it in there like that. It's pretty straightforward. Do be careful, got to get the alignment right. There's a 18mm bolt that runs through, that's 18mm headed, it runs through this way. Leave it loose. You can get behind there with a wrench to tighten it. Leave it loose so that you've got a little bit of play here, and you're not jammed up tight. Be careful, make sure these bolts start before you get on them. I did that and tried to cross thread one of them, but I fixed it up. So make sure these get started good. You also have a large bolt. Those are 15mm heads. And you've got an 18mm head that holds this in together. So that pretty much finishes it for the motor mounts. Wow is all I can say about that. Still got to reconnect the exhaust back there. I want to get a new gasket for it. And then re-secure this link here on the suspension. And then we're gonna be done. Totally done. This thing was something else. We're gonna get on and replace the front brakes before we put this thing, put the tires back on and put it on the ground. High confidence, gonna work well. Not a trivial job. If you do this job, it's very doable. Takes a lot of patience and takes a reasonable amount of time and effort to get it right. So good luck to you if you're doing yours. It can be done. No worries. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.